Hey everybody, June 12th, 2025, and I'm here with your after hours recap. As I'm making this video, I don't really see a ton of news outside of the news that, Israel is planning on attacking Iran. I don't know that, that is absolutely the culprit for what we are seeing here in after hours, but the NASDAQ futures and the S&P 500 futures are coming under a little bit of pressure. And then kind of if you look at your individual stock to stock basis, they are pulling back in Nvidia here quite a bit. And that's just kind of the same thing across the board, and Apple obviously been a laggard, but continuing lower, et cetera, across the board, whether it be Tesla or all your other main names. Again, even a Palantir right back at yesterday's lows. So, going into today, I had taken a long in Shopify and I did trim some yesterday into a little bit of profit. But obviously, with the remainder of my position, they came back for it and took me out at yesterday's lows. So, overall, it was still a losing position. Very grateful to be out of the thing because, as you can see, it stayed heavy all day long. And this is usually why I never ever argue with my stops. I don't even want to use the word usually. I never argue with my stops, and this is a prime example to the reason you don't want to do so. Especially like recently, like I said before, over the last 10 days, it's been kind of difficult to like really get some traction going in brand new positions, whether it be Shopify. More recently, ARC has been working well, but my assumption is that this one's gapping down tomorrow as well with the market. And then obviously TEM has been a decent one that has been working. But again, my expectation is that Shopify would go lower. So you don't want to hold on to something like that. When it hits your stop. And again, a SoFi, they will be stopping me out of this one tomorrow as well. So I did do something similar with SoFi today that I did with Shopify yesterday, and that is close a portion of my shares, for about a 10-cent gain, nothing crazy. But, it looks like if the market stays a little bit heavy, they're going to be coming for that one. Bitcoin, again, has been a little bit of a leader on the way up, leader on the way down, broke the 20 simple moving average today. And you can kind of even see it with a coin all day long where coin just stayed heavy, all day. So, I didn't, you couldn't say for sure that, it was going to go ahead and drag Bitcoin down, right? Coin has been kind of a laggard recently. But then again, on the flip side, you have been having these energy names like a CRK, looking really, really nice, move up, beautiful consolidation, breakout today. And obviously, this one is going to be gapping up tomorrow because crude is up 5% overnight and now getting over the 200 simple moving average. I mentioned this on the 6th that it was starting to look more and more like a failed breakdown, and just finally had its move down, consolidated just under the breakdown level, that this thing has been holding for several years, and then was able to get itself going right back through. And now this is acting more and more like a failed breakdown, and obviously one that is now back above the 200 simple moving average. And you've got several stocks that look pretty good. Obviously, crude oil itself, and then an MPC looks pretty dang good for tomorrow, and even a CVI, potential continuation in this one tomorrow. And then obviously CRK, and you've got another name potentially like AR. These names will absolutely be on the radar going forward. We don't really know what crude oil will do from here. What we do know for sure is that tech is coming under some pressure overnight. The NASDAQ and the S&P 500 are both coming under pressure tonight. And like I mentioned yesterday, we're kind of getting to the juncture where you V-shape recovery right back into near all-time highs. And I was starting to kind of spin my wheels. I'd gotten stopped out of Uber, and then really new names, or really even names that I had had for a while were, kind of faltering near their pivots. And you had kind of some funky action. 133.5 was the spot that I thought for Palantir to go ahead and break out. And as you guys can see tonight, we are going to be underneath that level going into tomorrow. So, do some people treat this like a failed breakout tomorrow? And, even like I said, is it maybe time to start, kind of keeping a balanced portfolio, seeing if you can get yourself short a name or two, and then gaining some traction. And then, if you're getting stopped out of longs, you've now got a few shorts on the book that you can kind of, keep your equity curve going up or flat as some of your longs continue to stop you out. Again, Palantir, Shopify, MSTR, your coins, your Oklos, your Googles, your Microsofts, your Apples, you name it, everything is gapping down at the moment. Again, I don't really see anything worth panicking about. Just make sure that you've got setups on both sides of the market. Like I said, I've been kind of spinning the wheels. It looks like I will take a loss as well in SoFi. I did go ahead and trim more ARK this afternoon when it broke the 5 simple moving average, and now we're gapping down quite a bit more, so I am glad that I was able to lock in half of my position. And again, I don't really know what comes tomorrow, but you can just kind of start to see it today, really, going into some of these growthier names that have been on a nice run, whether it be Carvana, CVNA, coming under some pressure today, effectively all day long on a pickup in volume. This has been, effectively a frozen rope, pickup in volume, closing below the 20 simple moving average. Likely continuation into tomorrow would be my guess if this market stays heavy. What else came under pressure? Net was another one that, off the back of my mind, came underneath some pressure today. Rubrik a few days ago came underneath pressure. There were some nice movements in VST today. I thought that one was pretty positive. But obviously, if you're buying some of this and the market's gapping down overnight, there is a possibility that you could get knocked out of, new purchases. Again, spinning wheels a little bit on the long side. So it's been a pretty tough environment, especially for myself trying to get long. And the reality is that there has been no traction there. I am fully trimmed. Toast for me has gone nowhere, and likely I get stopped out of that one tomorrow. TMDX has been one of my better movers, but completely trimmed. TMDX, I'm out half. SoFi, I'll end up taking a small loss on. Shopify took a small loss on that one today as well. And, you could just see the continuation overnight. So that's why you don't want to argue with these things. When they go ahead and break prior day low, you just got to get the heck out of them. And, I thought today there was some viable opportunities in the gold space. We were kind of eyes on KGC, and this one will likely be gapping up tomorrow. WPM I thought was pretty dang good, and over 90, and didn't really move. NEM was the kind of one that stuck out to me as, your better mover, and then you could see it tonight go ahead and gapping up some more. So, don't really want to continue to get super aggressive on the long side if I'm just spinning my wheels. My prior names have to kind of hold up. These names that have gone absolutely berserk for the last few weeks, whether it be a Rubrik or even a Roblox today. I kind of noticed, this one hit a high, got quite a bit extended, all day pressure. Again, this one's going to be gapping down. This one now needs multiple weeks of sideways. And that's just kind of the theme that we're seeing. An Uber has come under pressure. An MSTR recent leader has come under pressure. Palantir has been incredibly choppy, getting repositioned in a CrowdStrike, even though it's had a nice prior 2 days, has been incredibly choppy. And again, for anybody who bought this thing, call it on Wednesday, you're going to be gapping down and kind of testing some of those nerves tomorrow. Don't really know if we just go ahead and, get some of these gains back overnight. But that is probably the best case scenario. We gotta pull back in the market. You don't just go up 30% for the Nasdaq and don't retest any kind of levels. Again, we came right into the 20 simple moving average. Nothing really crazy. This is completely normal action. Once, twice, 3 times, 4 times here, coming near the 20. But again, if you just look at the names underneath the surface, while they might look really good, they're also fairly extended. Again, if we're talking about a hood, looks very nice, but again, gapping down overnight, I don't see anything wrong with this chart on the daily. AVGO, I thought, has been absolutely awesome. But again, overnight just giving up the entirety of its move, that gets pretty annoying more than anything, right? It's not that this chart's not strong, it's just that things are choppy. So depending on where you're buying it, you're kind of dealing with that chop right now. And it's pretty damn annoying to say the least. Again, I don't know if we kind of hang out near these levels tomorrow and how many people may or may not rush for the exit with this kind of action. But this is, again, I think pretty healthy. Names like, Oklo had an offering, kind of went made a new high today, which you would be like, well, what the hell? That's kind of insane. But then as soon as it did that, it was a failed breakout of, kind of failed to follow through, and then stayed heavy ever from there. And then, kind of trying to continue lower here potentially. And I was talking about this with a couple students in the room. Please do not play NNE. Everybody kind of thinks that this name is it's got to catch up, but the reality is what the hell do you think happens to an NNE when an Oklo and an SMR finally do pull back? The reality is that an NNE is going to get obliterated. So, don't be playing the laggards as a catch-up. That's usually my best advice. It's a laggard for a reason. And again, same thing with the AMD. You can see how this thing hit the 200 simple moving average yesterday, followed through to the downside today, even while NVIDIA was up, and then now gapping lower effectively to the 20 simple moving average overnight. So nothing wrong with these names, especially in the semi space. I still think that they look awesome. I'm still of the belief that you're going to have a hard time bringing the market lower. Bringing the market lower if semiconductors and banks continue to hold up well. Again, one of the banks that I own is JP Morgan, but it is possible that I am stopped out of this thing below the 20 simple moving average tomorrow. And again, I don't really know what to make of the environment until I start to see some really clean setups again, things that are nice and tight. Some of the best setups that I am seeing are in the banking sector, but again, just as easily tomorrow they can all be losing their 20 and we can have some follow through to the downside from there. So no real opinions from me. As always, take it one setup at a time. And if your stop gets hit like it did with mine in Shopify, please do not argue. They could go from looking absolutely fantastic one day to being absolutely dogs the next. And that is exactly, here's a nice little flat pivot. And then the next day it's looking pretty good, nice push. And then the very next day, down, closes weak, and then potentially gapping down overnight to $104. That is not pretty at all. So, good to not argue with price. Let traction in your portfolio kind of dictate where you need to be. And, for me, it's just kind of been on the sidelines, right? Like I said, I went ahead and booked half of my ARC. I've booked half of my TEM. I've booked a majority of my TMDX. I am untrimmed on JPM. It's still my only full position. Toast, I've been out of half for quite a while. And SoFi, a third of my position trimmed today, which it's likely I still end up taking a loss on it tomorrow. And short QBTS from yesterday. Kind of yesterday, I noticed that, while a Rigetti was absolutely ripping, this thing was, kind of rolling over. So I got myself short 1670s. And I added some more today when we took out I added more today when we took out yesterday's lows. So, again, I hate to have opinions. It's like gold still to me looks pretty good, and gold was on the watch yesterday. I just couldn't find myself into any of these names, and that's too bad because these things are gapping up overnight, and it's likely that they continue. Maybe NEM is still viable for tomorrow. Gold is not crowded according to COT data, and this daily chart still looks super, super constructive, right? Broke out of this little bull flag as it came into the 20 and effectively looked like we might be off to the races again, right? You had this big move up off the lows, effectively almost, since when is this? January, almost, what is this, 30% move for gold, and then we've done nothing wrong for a few months, just digest, and we could be off to the races again. So crude oil looks decent, gold looks pretty decent, looks like it's going to be a nice commodities day potentially soon. Again, remember, commodities are typically best bought off of ascending moving averages. Chasing a commodity, buying a gap up, it's tough. But I'm going to try another short or two tomorrow and see if I can gain traction. Again, I'm a little bit weary about chasing gap downs as well, but you can really see it in the market today. Again, I know the leaders are holding up pretty well, whether you're talking about an AVGO or a Hood or a CrowdStrike or a Palantir, et cetera, et cetera. But the market is on this V-shaped recovery, and everybody just assumes that these V-shaped recoveries kind of continue. And again, I don't want to be negative so long as semis and banks are holding up. But again, I need to listen to the traction in my portfolio. And recently, like I said, I've been getting stopped out of things. Add Shopify to that list. Likely tomorrow, add SoFi to that list, and very likely add JP Morgan to that list. So, getting stopped out on the long side is never fun, but I do have some of those positions hedged with a short, and I will continue to look for more overnight. So, guys, as it stands right now, like I said, the Nasdaq and the S&P 500 are kind of coming under some pressure. So, please, one day at a time. Hopefully, this video helps, and we will see you guys bright and early for pre-market prep. Cheers.